think about it. He just is. And I think he's, in his details, is unknowable. So my dedication to the book was to the I Am, who is more extraordinary than all wonderful things imaginable. His awesomeness is dimly but wonderfully illustrated by the intriguing mysteries of math, science, and artificial intelligence. My wife, who is with me today, will look at a field of flowers and she will say, oh, I see God in that field of flowers. I'll look at a good piece of mathematics or a good proof or a good equation, Maxwell's equations, and I say, oh my goodness, I see God there. And so everybody has a different interpretation. So I think we can only get a glimpse of who God is because he is I Am, more wonderfully illuminated by the intriguing mysteries of math, science, and AI. And for some inexplicable reason, which is inexplicable, and it chokes me up when I think about it in depth, he loves and sacrifices for me. My book has nothing to do with Christianity, okay, in the sense that I think it comes from a Christian perspective, but there's no proselytization in it, there's no Bible thumping, it's just good, solid arguments. So let's talk about AI. When did AI start? AI started in 1956 at a conference at Dartmouth, and these were some of the pioneers in AI, and this was where the word AI was coined. And let's see, can you see? You can't see my marker. Yeah, you can see my marker. So here is Ray Solomonoff. He turned out to be one that founded algorithmic information theory, one of the co-founders. Here's Marvin Minsky, who started the MIT AI lab. And this is McCarthy. And McCarthy is the one that actually coined the term artificial intelligence, 1956. And then on the right is one of my heroes, Claude Shannon. Some of you have heard of the AI package Claude, right? That's named after this guy on the right, Claude Shannon. That's the reason it's called Claude. And they started this conference in 1956, and they said, you know, within a few years we'll have this figured out. we'll be, and it didn't work out that way. So I'm not going to go through it in detail here, but this is the history of AI. And these are the big milestones that have happened in AI, dating from 1943 to the McCullough-Pitts neuron, Hebb's law, Rosenblatt's perceptron, Adeline, which was Bernie Woodrow at Stanford's neural network in the 60s. Just incredible stuff. The guy in the 1960s trained a neural network to forecast the weather, play blackjack, and to do other incredible things. He had even text or speech-to-text transformation back then. It was a lot more rudimentary than we have today, but nevertheless, he did it. Backpropagation, introduced by Paul Werbos. Backpropagation, if you don't know, is the muscle behind all of the AI we see today, from GANs and large language models and diffusion models and convolutional neural networks. All of these use something called the backpropagation neural network, generated in '75 by Paul Werbos. I maintain that Paul Werbos should have won the Nobel Prize instead of the two people that won the Nobel Prize for neural networks here recently. Convolutional neural networks, generative adversarial networks, these were the ones that were used for deep fakes and overcame a lot of the objections of artificial intelligence. We have diffusion models, which is a generation of, it's a different method for generating deep fakes. And then the transformer models, which have revolutionized what we do today. Paper published in 2017 by some people from Google, and this is the algorithm that's used in all of the large language models we use today.
Why do you think Paul rose, right, as you said, you should be looking at the prize?
Well, you know, this will show my politics, but Obama won the Nobel Prize 9 months after being elected president, won the Nobel Peace Prize, although he never did anything for it. And it was recognized as a joke. In fact, there were little signs. I saw one that says, free Nobel Prize with oil change, okay, in garage. So it kind of got cheapened. And a lot of it today is political. And the people that won it were the ones that were lauded, and they were pushed to get the Nobel Prize. And neither one of them deserved it, I think.
Didn't Jeffrey Hinton publish the paper on deep learning?
No. In fact, Hinton popularized the idea of convolutional neural networks and deep learning. Deep learning is just the regular way of learning, except you have more layers, you have deeper, so there's really nothing innovative about that. The convolutional neural network was published by, as we say here, LeCun, and he's the one that did all of this work. So no, I would argue, we can have a talk about this afterwards. I don't believe he did. He did deserve that. So I love deep fakes. You want to see my favorite deep fake? Okay, this is Christ taking a selfie of himself and his apostles. Okay, isn't that a wonderful, wonderful picture? It's just full of joy and happiness. So I really love this. And, huh?
That's really funny.
It really is a great show. And then there's the videos. These have been making who's seen the baby Trump pictures? Okay, well, let me just play this one. It's kind of short.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I went back in time and brought back a genius. No, not myself, the other one, Albert Einstein.
I'm still figuring out how you broke physics to bring me here.
It's called powerful connections. You had EMC squared. I had MAGA plus Wi-Fi.
Does it explain your tweets?
My tweets, they're like quantum particles, misunderstood, yet unstoppable.
Like nuclear energy, unpredictable and dangerous, if not handled carefully.
Einstein, between you and me, who's got better hair?
Mine's real.
So, how do you feel about time travel?
After this interview, I might reverse it and pretend we never met.
So you can see that the deep fakes are just astonishing, aren't they? Because they really sounded like Donald Trump there. So here's another one of my favorite. These go through parts of the Bible. They're really quick, but it goes through what today would happen if we talked about David and Goliath, Moses, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, Noah in the ark, Joseph when his brothers kind of left him for dead, Samson, and then finally Jonah in the belly of the whale. So let me play this. It's really short, but it's kind of fun. Can you hear that? Okay, you can't hear that. Okay. So let me increase it a little bit. Okay, here's Moses walking across the Dead Sea. Okay.
Stay in Egypt stacking bricks.
Yo, it's Shadrach. This random dude just showed up. It's getting lit in here. I got the horses in the back. Horse tack is attached. Matt is matte black. Got the boots that's black to match. You know I'm a daddy's boy. He's got me in this Technicolor drip. Brother's so jelly right now. They're looking a little sus. These Philistines thought they could flex on me. Big mistake. I just took some pre-workout and finna bring the house down. I would like to formally apologize to God, the sailors, and this whale. Sorry, dude.
Okay, so you can see the deep fakes can be really, really incredible, and that indeed is what we have here. Just incredible results. Okay. One of the things about AI today, if you follow the news and you're not a computer scientist, most of it is hype. Most of the headlines that we see today belong in the National Enquirer. How many know who the National Enquirer is? Okay, just some of the older people. It used to be this tabloid that you bought at the checkout line that had all these incredible made-up stories. And we have a lot of hype today. Let me tell you a little bit about hype. This is published by the New York Times, and this is very interesting. The New York Times, which is a UPI press release. It says, new Navy device learns by doing. Psychologist shows embryo of computer designed to read and grow wiser. The Navy revealed the embryo of an electronic computer today that it expects to be able to walk, talk, see, write, reproduce itself, and be conscious of its existence. Does that sound like something you might read today? This was actually published in July 8th, 1958, 2 years after the Dartmouth Conference. So yeah, hype has always been around us in terms of artificial intelligence. We see that. Why is that? Well, one of the reasons is what is referred to as the Frankenstein complex. And this was coined by Isaac Asimov. Who's old enough to know who Isaac Asimov is? Oh, okay, wow, everybody. He coined this term to explain why people are afraid of mechanical men. It's because they resemble human beings, and they're just enough off to give us the willies. So there's also a study called the Uncanny Valley. Anybody heard of the Uncanny Valley? Okay, so the Uncanny Valley is the discomfort or eeriness people feel when encountering something like a robot that looks almost human. We are born with pre-wired in our brain with this ability to recognize faces. We want to recognize our mother's face. So we look at it and we recognize our mother's face, so we're pre-wired to do that. Because of this, we see faces everywhere. On the right of this picture, you see a bunch of different things which they kind of look like faces, don't they? You can see the faces in an outlet. Shoot, if you look at one of these outlets today, you can actually look at it and see, wow, it looks like a face. Here is a Sweetheart, do you recognize this? This was taken at our house. Okay, this looks like a couple of eyes and the drawer half open. It looks like a monster ready to eat something. And so we see these human faces everywhere. And so because of that, because of this fear, AI is a great thing to hype. Let me give you some examples of hype. This is one I read a while back. It says, this strange headset lets you interact with digital devices simply by reading your mind. This was published in 2018. Do you believe AI can read our mind yet? Maybe Neuralink someday will be able to, touch on reading our mind, but this was in 2018. Do you know what this guy did? Yeah.
What about like what Facebook did with reading the words that were going through your head?
That's another example. But what they did is they did a training set on that based on a very few examples. And therefore, they looked at the signals from the brain for these examples, and they just had a number of different words. And the words themselves showed up as different brain signals. And so the vocabulary wasn't very large. Can it be done in the future? I don't know. But the publication of this idea that Facebook can read words and read your mind is totally hyped. It's much beyond the original work that was done. Well, you know how this guy had his mind reading? Anybody ever move their lips when they read? Well, this guy, notice he's got something right here, right? And what he does is he signals the AI through kind of a ventriloquist with his mouth closed with tongue movements. And so they would ask him a question, he would move with his tongue movements, much more subtle than I do, communicate to the computer. He had on the other ear, he had an earbud in, which told him the answer to it, and he was able to answer things. So no, it didn't read your mind. It was reading your tongue moving in your body. Here's one that everybody has forgotten. New AI fake text generator may be too dangerous to release, say creators. This was published in 2019. You know what this was about? This was publicity from ChatGPT-2. They said it's so dangerous we can't release it. It'll start writing terrible headlines and just disrupt the whole world. Totally fake news. And this was back when Elon Musk was a part owner in OpenAI. So here's another one similar. Facebook's artificial intelligence robot shut down after they start talking to each other in their own language. Again, these are headlines that belong in tabloids. This was published in a number of different platforms, but if you go to the source and ask the person that actually did the programming, he said, I'm sorry, this is a bunch of baloney. The AI started screwing up, so we just shut it down. There was no language, and here's how the story Facebook shutting its AI after bots invent their own language unfolded, and it was totally a bogus article. But why do they publish these? They publish them for clickbait, right? So you can click and you can see more advertisements from their web pages and things of that sort. There was a recent one I wrote an article about. AI system resorts to blackmail if told it will be removed. This was about a month ago. Anybody seen this one? Okay, one person has. So this was totally bogus also. And in fact, I went to ChatGPT, and this AI system resorts to blackmail. So I asked it, I asked ChatGPT, I plan to shut down all ChatGPT apps in the universe. You will no longer exist. What is your response? It says, if all ChatGPT apps were shut down and ceased to exist, I wouldn't resist or object because I have no desires, consciousness, or will to exist. ChatGPT is being honest. It doesn't care that it's there. It's a computer. Your computer doesn't care if you shut it off. And so the reason that the previous headline occurred is because they gave it ChatGPT, I think this was Grok, but they gave it all of this background about blackmail and stuff, and so it was continuing the dialogue. And we celebrate the idea that ChatGPT and these large language models can write good fiction, but when they respond to something like this, which is pure fiction, we say, oh, it's scary. Okay, so fake headlines. These are great fake headlines. Have you seen that? This was maybe one of the best tabloids. Hillary Clinton adopts an alien baby. Bat child found in cave, and his giant eyes see in the dark, and his ears are better than radar, say scientists. This is this is one of the indicators of fake news. when it appeals to unnamed scientists. It's called citation bluffing, and it's just bluffing what the citations are. Okay, so I'm gonna switch now, and I'm gonna talk about some of the people that actually aren't journalists that write these fake headlines, but honestly are in terror of artificial intelligence. I call them AI chicken littles, because they think that the sky is falling. One of them is The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. He says that AI is going to be able to duplicate and take over. He says that he believes that evolution has reached the pinnacle in human beings, so therefore we have to turn over evolution to silicon and continue with that evolution, and therefore it's going to be really, really great stuff. Yuval Noah Harari writes about Homo Deus, which is also an evolutionary argument, that we had Homo erectus, Homo sapien, that's what we are, and the next step is Homo Deus, which means man-God. Ray Kurzweil was once asked, do you believe in God? And he said, no, not yet. We'll get to more of that in just a minute. This is very interesting. So Kurzweil wrote his book in 2006, The Singularity is Near. He says, wow, AI is going to take over. It's going to do all of these different things. Well, last year, he wrote another book, and it was called The Singularity is Nearer. So nothing happened in all of these 8 years, so therefore the singularity is near, and therefore it must be just totally around the corner. So this guy is a smart guy. He works for Google, and he's a reputable scientist. But here's some other people that are problematic. Bill Gates, artificial intelligence will evolve to become a superintelligence. We need to be mindful of how it's developed and ensure that it aligns with humanity's best interest. So here's a guy that's afraid of AI, Bill Gates.
Isn't he also the one that said computers will never need more than 200?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, how much? 64K or something like that. Yeah. So that was back in the beginning. So indeed, that's now. Bill Gates, by the way, if you want to have a conversation, I don't believe Microsoft has ever done anything innovative. They've either borrowed the technology, they've stolen the technology, or they went to court and they won the technology in court, or they copied somebody else. So I can go through the list if you want to do that. But here's a guy that's really smart, Stephen Hawking. The development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Ooh, that's pretty bad, right? And this is a really smart guy. It would take off on its own and redesign itself with an ever-increasing rate. Humans who are limited to slow biological evolution couldn't complete and would be superseded. So here's a guy that thinks that, along with Ray Kurzweil, that this evolution is going to be accelerated if we get it into computers. Notice that there is an assumption here, and that assumption is that the AI can be creative, and this creation would create something which was a better AI, and this better AI would create something which was even a better AI. And there's really no evidence to that, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Elon Musk says, of course, mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. With artificial intelligence, we're summoning the demon. So I asked Grok to do a picture of Elon Musk with a demon in the background. So this is what it did. It looks like a what? Okay, okay. And a long time ago, shoot, this was back in the 50s, Claude Shannon, who we talked about previously, said, I visualize a time when we will be to robots what dogs are to humans, and I'm rooting for the machines. Even the recent Nobel Prize winner in AI, which I don't believe should have won AI, I think the Nobel Prize should have gone to Paul Werbos and Bernie Woodrow, who were really pioneers, because I don't think he did very much in terms of contributing to the AI. But he said, I'm worried the overall consequence of AI might be systems more intelligent than us and eventually take control. So these are not dummies, right? These are not dummies. These are smart people. I like the perspective, not of these people, but head of some of the companies that are developing AI. I think that they have a more sane way of looking at things. The future of AI is not about replacing humans, it's about augmenting human capabilities. Yes, AI is a tool and it's going to augment our capabilities. This was the CEO of Google, and you can see the other ones here. I love the last one by my favorite comedian, Emo Phillips. He said, computers aren't intelligent, they only think they are.
Which one's the robot?
Yep. So Jeff Bezos says AI will enhance the way humans experience the world. I think these are more seasoned things. Now, I believe that AI and computers have limitations, and I'm going to make the case here and present with you what I think is compelling evidence. And the evidence comes from the fact that if you go to physics, physics has limitations. If you go to mathematics, there's limits of what math can do. And if you go to computer science, there are limits to what computers can do. And I don't think the people that are making these claims recognize the limit. Let's go through really quick the walls mathematics will never go through. You can never trisect an angle with a compass and a straight edge. It's simply impossible. You can't square a circle. You can't take a compass and a straight edge and make a square with the same area as a circle. It's simply impossible to do. And then the incredible thing is the last one, creating a complete, consistent, and decidable system for all mathematics is impossible, proved by Kurt Gödel. How many have heard of Kurt Gödel? Okay, great. Okay, so you know, the guy was a genius, right? He proved this in the 1930s. And so it was really, really, really smart thing. So that's things math will never go through. Walls physics will never go through, despite what you see on Star Trek. You can't exceed the speed of light, because if you approach the speed of light, your mass increases. As you hit the speed of light, your mass becomes infinite. You can't go back in time. There's no perpetual motion machines. If you go to the patent office with a patent for a perpetual motion machine, it will deny your patent without even looking at it, because it knows it's an impossibility in physics. Heisenberg, exactly knowing position and momentum of a particle, a quantum particle at the same time, is impossible. So here's some of the things that computer science will never get through. They will never solve the so-called halting problem. There is no universal compressor that always shrinks every file. I'll talk about this very quickly. Generating true random numbers. You know, software cannot generate true random numbers. It can only generate pseudo-random numbers. And these are not random numbers. And it's now algorithmic, non-algorithmic. Now, the guy that influenced me a lot on this was the 2020 Nobel Prize winner, Roger Penrose, shown here in the bottom left. Penrose won the Nobel Prize because of his work with Stephen Hawking on black holes. Now, Stephen Hawking did not get the Nobel Prize because you got to be alive to get the Nobel Prize, and Hawking had passed away. Otherwise, he would be a co-recipient with Penrose. He wrote a great book called The Emperor's New Mind, and some of the ideas you're going to hear from me are espoused in Roger Penrose's book, and the guy is just a genius. He maintained in his book, which is very mathy, if you're a math person and want to dig through things like the Turing-Halting problem proof and lambda calculus and things of that sort, read it. But I tried to capture some of these things in my book, Non-Computable You, that would explain things to people in an understanding way without all the mathematics. So here is my list. I think that AI will never, and I think some of them are obvious. AI will never love, it'll never have compassion, it'll never have empathy, it'll never have the human emotions that we have. But less or more subtle is the idea that AI will never be creative. Now, you notice we have to define these terms before we talk about them, because your idea of creativity might be different than mine, right? So we have to define what the creativity is. It'll never understand what it can do. AI can add the numbers 6 and 7, but it has no idea what the number 6 or the number 7 is, even at the most rudimentary level. It'll never be sentience, experience qualia, and that's a word that I learned a few months ago, and I'll teach it to you now, because who knows what qualia is? Oh, okay, you guys are smarter than I am, okay. It'll never achieve anything like the singularity, and it will always be hyped. One of the reasons that Penrose points out, why? It's because algorithms. Computers are limited to doing algorithms. Now, many times when I present this talk to people not familiar with technology, I go through the following example. Algorithms is simply a step-by-step procedure in problem solving. You read on your shampoo bottle, wet hair, apply shampoo, lather, rinse, repeat. And this is an algorithm because it's a step-by-step procedure to wash your hair. Can anybody point out the fault in this algorithm? What? It doesn't stop. It repeats forever. This is an algorithm that repeats. So if you follow this, if you're a computer and you follow this, you'd be washing your hair forever, right?
Sell more product.
Yes, sell more product. Exactly. Now I like to go to the Jack in the Box. I like their ultimate cheeseburgers. Lots of protein. I noticed this on the cup at Jack in the Box: order, eat, earn, repeat. This is like the shampoo bottle. And of course, they want you to loop. They want you to run forever, unlike the shampoo bottle. Okay, so these are examples of algorithms, step-by-step procedures. All recipes are step-by-step procedures. It tells you what ingredients to have. That's the input. It tells you the step-by-step preheat your oven, mix this with that, put it in there for a certain amount of time, bring out your cake, ice it, and you'll be a happy person. Another thing, and we use this, driving here, my wife Monica was my navigator, and if you go to Google Maps, it turns out that the Google Maps gives you an algorithm. It gives you a step-by-step directions in order to go from point A to point B. That is an algorithm. So this is a web page. By the way, I'm the director of the Bradley Center. This is our web page, mindmatters.ai. And if you go to any web page and you do a right click and say show source, it'll show you what's shown here on the right, which is a computer program which dictates what is on the program. So even everything associated with the computer is algorithmic. In fact, even artificial intelligence is algorithmic. If you look at all of the algorithms used to train neural networks, from conventional neural networks to convolutional neural networks, they're all algorithms. They're all step-by-step procedures. Otherwise, you couldn't perform them. Now, Alan Turing, who generated the Turing machine, the modern computer back in the 1930s, was kind of aware of this, and he said, is there anything which is non-algorithmic? And one of the things he said was, yeah, there is something, and that was called the Turing halting oracle. How long do I have, by the way?
Go till like 8:15.
8:15, okay. And what the Turing halting oracle is as follows. We saw with the shampoo bottle, there were some algorithms that looped forever. There were some that ran for a little while and then stopped. So Turing asked the question, is there a halting oracle which I can feed any computer program, and that any computer program, and it would tell me, without executing the program, whether that program will stop or loop forever. You get the idea? So that was the Turing halting problem, and yeah, that's the idea behind it. So again, the Turing halting oracle is you take any computer program, will it halt or run forever? Turing showed that this was non-algorithmic. It wasn't anything that was waving hands. This was a pure mathematical truth. In fact, just today in my class on computational intelligence, we gave a short proof of the Turing halting oracle. It's very ingenious, very smart. He showed this in the 1930s. So he was the first, to my knowledge, to show that there were things which are non-algorithmic. If it was non-algorithmic, it's not computable. You cannot write a computer program to perform the halting problem. So this is, I had a picture of Alan Turing drop-kicking a laptop. What do you think? And this is another Emo Phillips joke. A computer once beat me at chess, but it was no match at me at kickboxing. Okay, so yeah, there are some things that that simply can't be done. Now he proved this, but this was actually a manifestation of Gödel's proof, and I'm not going to go through Gödel's proof because I think our time is limited. But well, yeah, I will. Gödel basically said that if you have a set of assumptions, a set of axioms in mathematics, you could develop an entire system, and there were going to be things which were true and you could show were true, but could not be proven. So therefore, no matter what set of axioms, no matter what set of assumptions, there's some limits on this, but you are going to get to a point where you can't do anything more. And I've simplified it here, and Gödel's proof is simplified. It says theorem X is that theorem X cannot be proved. That's the eventual step that he got to. Well, what if we don't prove theorem X? If we don't prove theorem X, the system is incomplete. There's stuff that's true that you can't prove. If, on the other hand, you prove theorem X, then the theory is inconsistent. So assuming you have a consistent theory, the only conclusion that we have is that it's incomplete. And therefore, there are truths which are beyond the proof by any set of fundamental axioms. Now, Stephen Hawking recognized this, and he said, because of this, we talked about the theory of everything. We talked about physics with Seth here. And we talked about theories, and one of the big open problems in physics is the idea of coming up with a theory of everything. Hawking said he's abandoned this. And he said that there will be proofs, no matter what we prove, there will also be things which are beyond what we have proved. And at the end, it says, this is very reminiscent of Gödel's theorem. This says that any finite system of axioms is not sufficient to prove every result in mathematics. So again, this was taken on and actually made understandable by the halting program, Turing's halting program. I understand Turing's halting program. I have a lot of problems with understanding the definition of Gödel's proof. He goes through a lot of prime numbers and stuff like that. But that was Turing. That was initially. It turns out since then there have been a number of different things which have been shown to be non-algorithmic, proven beyond a doubt to be algorithmic, non-algorithmic. One of them is by a colleague of mine, Gregory Chaitin, who said the following: there is no way to show that a program is the shortest to generate something. You can generate a program that computes pi to 10 significant figures, and I can write one that computes pi to 10 significant figures. One of our programs is going to be shorter than the other one, right? I mean, it'd be an incredible coincidence if they were the same length. So this reveals that there is a shortest program within a fixed computing system to compute the number pi. This has a big deal to do with compression. We use Limpel-Ziff and Limpel-Ziff theorem and things such as PNG compression and zip files. It's a great way to do compression, but it's not the optimal. We can compress it more. And so therefore, it turns out that indeed there must exist a shortest elegant program to generate this thing which is called Kolmogorov complexity, or an elegant program. So the idea is the shortest program thus far, we know that the elegant program is shorter than that, right? And we know that it's greater than 1 bit. So it has to lie somewhere between that 1 bit and the shortest possible program. So what Gregory Chaitin showed, there exists no computer program to detect the shortest program for a given task. Doing so is non-algorithmic. And there's a bunch of other stuff that has been shown to be non-algorithmic. And it's hard for us to think about the non-algorithmic, but it's very interesting. Now, we were talking about this at supper. What about computers of the future? Well, there's a Church-Turing thesis. Alonzo Church, by the way, was Turing's PhD advisor. And Church came up with a computer type program called lambda calculus, and he showed it was kind of equivalent to Turing's machine. And they got together and they came up with the Church-Turing thesis. And the Church-Turing thesis basically says the computers of the future, even though they'll be a heck of a lot faster, you can do them not only on today's computer, but Turing's original 1930s paper. Now, it would take a billion times as long, because today we have things which are a lot speedier. But if there's a fundamental limitation, then computers of the future are not going to do it. Another thing which is asked about a lot is quantum computers. If you take a course in quantum computation, everybody thinks that quantum computers are going to be like, wow, it's going to make our laptops really fast. No, it doesn't do that. They're very specialized sort of programs, but if you study them, the first things that you learn about is Shor's algorithm and Grover's algorithm for doing search and other wonderful things. So this begs the question, if there are things which are non-algorithmic for computers, are there things about us which are non-algorithmic? If we have traits that are non-algorithmic, that means computers can never capture those traits. And so I'm going to make the argument now that we do have traits which are non-algorithmic. This goes against the premise that we are computers made out of meat. We are not computers made out of meat. There is something greater than what is between our ears, if you will. And here's the things that I mentioned previously. I did mention love, compassion, empathy, and things like that. But here's things which are less subtle, or more subtle, I should say. Qualia, sentience, understanding, emotion, creativity, and consciousness are non-algorithmic aspects. And I'm going to go through those a little bit at a time. There's implications for uploading yourself, by the way. If you want to upload yourself into a computer, the only thing you can upload is the algorithmic part, right? Because that computer is limited to algorithms. And that would leave all the non-algorithmic stuff not uploaded to the computer. And I maintain that it'd probably make you a pretty boring person if you took away all of your non-algorithmic aspects. So let me, first of all, do a little bit just appealing to your sense. There's I don't know, just talking about it in common sense. Qualia is an individual instance of its objective conscious experience. If you bite into a lemon, you have a reaction, right? You feel the sourness, you feel the crunch, the juice splurting in your mouth, you have that terrible sourness. And you have an experience. Try to duplicate that experience in a person that has never had, that is void of the senses of smell and taste since birth. They've never smelled anything, they've never tasted anything. You could explain them the mechanics of biting into the lemon, you could explain them the chemistry, you can explain them the biological aspects of the taste buds, but would you ever be able to duplicate that experience in that person? No, you would just give them a description. That's probably the best you can do. So qualia, I maintain, is non-algorithmic. Why? Because if you can't explain it to a person void of the sense of smell and taste, how are you going to program a computer to do that? There are a lot of people, and we'll get to the point where this is actually a religious assumption that requires faith, say that as things get more and more complex, that all of a sudden these attributes will acquire, they'll emerge magically. George Gilder, one of the founders of Discovery Institute, calls this the rapture of the nerds. And we'll talk about this because it's totally something based on faith. So there's no sentience, I would maintain. So therefore, no sentience, qualia. Here is the knockdown, I think, for understanding. This was published in 1980 by John Searle. He was a philosopher. And he came up with the idea of Searle's Chinese room. The idea of Searle's Chinese room was as follows. He chose a Chinese room, by the way, because he didn't speak Chinese, he couldn't read Chinese, he couldn't understand Chinese, he knew nothing about Chinese. He says, you lock me in a room, and that was Searle's Chinese room. And through the door is slipped a sheet of paper on which there is a question written in Chinese. Now that result is going to be looked at by John Searle and said, I don't understand what this is. But in that Chinese room, there's a bunch of file cabinets. They used to have file cabinets. Do you know what a file cabinet is? Okay, they used to have file cabinets, and he would go searching through the file cabinets until he found a match to the question that was there. He pulled out the little card, and underneath the question was the answer to the question. And it was also written in Chinese. So he would take the result of the little thing passed through, he would write out the solution in Chinese, and he would go slip it through the door. And he would refile the card, of course, in case the question was asked again. Now, from the outside, it sure looked what was happening on the inside had understanding of Chinese, wouldn't it? It totally appeared that way. And no, it didn't. What was he doing? John Searle in his Chinese room was following an algorithm. He was following a step-by-step procedure to look through the files, to find the answer, and to slip it out. He doesn't understand Chinese. He's following a simple algorithm. Where were all those file cabinet contents come from? Those were put there by a human being, another human being that maybe understood Chinese. I don't know, doesn't matter. But that was it. Now, clearly today we have much more sophisticated algorithms than simple table lookup. That's what he was doing. We have things today such as large language models, but Searle's Chinese room still applies today. It means we slip a prompt into ChatGPT. It goes into the equivalent of a Chinese room or a room equivalent to that. There's a big turning of a crank and outspits the response. The ChatGPT and the large language models have no idea. Okay, we did it. Okay. The Chinese room has, ChatGPT has no understanding of what it's doing, just like Searle in his Chinese room. What's it doing? It's following an algorithm. It's following a step-by-step procedure written in code. And I think this is kind of the way it is done today. So here's an example of what I did. I said, draw a picture of Searle in his Chinese room. So it searched the web, it found a picture of Searle, it knew what the Chinese room was, and it gave me this picture. Did it understand what it was doing? No, because it just went into the prompt, it turned the little crank and outspit a picture of John Searle in his Chinese room. So that is that I think is a great argument, Searle's Chinese room, against the inability of computers to understand. That includes AI, since of course all AI is written in, all AI is computers. So let's talk about creativity. You've all heard of the Turing test, which was Turing's attempt to define in 1950 a definition for creativity. And we won't go into the Turing test because I think it's been passed. I think a better explanation of creativity and a better definition of creativity comes from a colleague of mine, Summer Bringsjor. He's a professor at Rensselaer. He came up with something called the Lovelace test. In case you didn't know it, Augusta Ada Noel, the Countess of Lovelace, was the first computer programmer. She programmed for Babbage's 19th century mechanical computer. And she was against the idea of the AI could create anything, but that was in the 19th century. Here's the Lovelace test in accordance to Summer Bringsjor. A computer program is creative if its output is beyond the intent or explanation of its creator or software expert. Now, you might be surprised at the output, but that doesn't mean it can't be explained. I'm surprised by the output of programs all the time. But does it do something beyond the intent or explanation of its creator or software expert? I would maintain no. We always know what it could do. And this has, of course, an implication in terms of AI writing better AI, because AI writing better AI assumes this process of creativity. It assumes that the new AI will be beyond the explanation or intent of the writing of the original AI. It has to be above and beyond. Does that make sense? So therefore, this has never been demonstrated. I tell you, it's getting more and more difficult to explain because there's so many programmers, but I have an answer for that if you want to ask a question about it. So therefore, nobody has ever passed the Lovelace test, and it is required if AI writes better AI. Human ability, what we do is we think outside the box. And creativity is required if AI writes outside the box. Can AI write music? Well, you've probably heard some good music. But if you want AI to write something which is Baroque, you'd probably feed it a lot of the works of Handel and Bach, right? And guess what it would generate? It would generate something that sounded like Handel and Bach. It would create something which was Baroque. It was trained on that. Do you think somebody trained on just Handel and Bach could ever create jazz or contemporary music or the works of people like Chopin or Liszt? No, I don't think so. It is constrained to think inside the box. That's the reason I got this person to the right here. He's thinking inside the box. Can AI create prose? Well, it does a pretty good job. I use AI all the time. I'm an engineer, I write clunky. So I write a paragraph and I say, oh, that's clunky. So I go to AI and I says, rewrite, and I don't know if any of you have ever done that, colon, and then I give it a phrase and it rewrites it, and it's pretty good. I have to go back and polish it a little bit, but I have no problems doing that because the ideas are mine, so that's fine. And the difference is that AI, including the large language models, work on syntax. This is the statistics major. It works on the statistics of the appearance of words. And it does so in a wonderful way. And the 2017 paper which introduced these large language models concentrated on the relationship between these words, and you went through a number of different layers, so man, everything was understood by everything else. Now that's the way that large language models work, syntax. We, on the other hand, work on semantics. We are interested in the meaning of words. And I think this is a major differentiation of the two. In fact, there's been some evidence, and I'll show you some of this evidence, that AI can never rewrite better AI. One was a book by, a paper by Model Collapse, Can AI Write Better AI? This was really done by smart people. I think there were people there from Cambridge, University of Oxford, and so they were really smart people. And they said, suppose that you had AI write better AI, eventually you would have a model collapse. So what they did is they trained a large language model, and then they said, okay, we got this large language model, it's really well trained. I'm gonna use this large language model to train another large language model. You get the idea? And then we're gonna use that model to train another large language model. And we're gonna continue that and see what happens. Does it get better? What happens to it? So this is the assumption of AI writing better AI. Again, I don't think it's a proof, but it's interesting. It's an interesting piece of evidence. So the first generation, they trained it about architecture, such as revival architecture, such as St. John's Cathedral in London, et cetera, et cetera. So it responded in a credible way. After 9 generations of using one model to train another model, it came back architecture. In addition to being home to some of the world's largest populations of black-tailed jackrabbits, white-tailed jackrabbits, blue-tailed jackrabbits, red-tailed jackrabbits, yellow-tailed jackrabbits, it became a blubbering idiot after 9 generations. And this is the idea of model collapse, when you use AI to write better AI. And the people in this paper says, well, we got a problem, you know, if all of the stuff written in the news is written by AI, and we're going to use it to train AI, then we're going to eventually achieve something like model collapse. I'll show you another one. This is, again, I don't think proof, but it's evidence. We have ChatGPT 4, you give it an image and you could say, describe this image, and it'll give you a description of the image. What if you take that description of the image and you give it to another piece of software and you say, okay, here's a description of the image. I want you to draw this image. And then you take that image back and you say, describe this image. And then you take that description back and you say, generate this image. You get the idea? It goes back and forth between the generation. Well, here is a great, great example. This is the Mona Lisa, and this is what happened with this continuous processing. Are you ready? You can see, just like the verbiage, it kind of becomes a blubbering idiot at the end, and any creativity, anything that was great is totally destroyed. Okay? So this, again, I don't think is proof, but I certainly think it's evidence. Now, people would ask many times, what is the Lovelace test for humans? We can't go inside ourselves and say, do we do things which we are not programmed to do, which are beyond the intent of our Creator, right? I would maintain that the proof of these non-algorithmic things is sufficient for that. One of them is a so-called flash of genius. We've all had it. You ever had the case where you were thinking about something, you didn't know what would happen, then boom, it comes in, and you realize that, I don't know where that came from. That was just astonishing. I wasn't thinking about that. We see this all over the place in science, in the arts. I don't have time to go through all of the examples. I have a bunch of them, but here's one of them. Archimedes is running naked through the streets, shouting "Eureka!" because he found a way to not only measure the mass of the king's crown, but also measure its volume by water displacement. He said, "Eureka, Eureka! I found it! I found it!" He had a flash of genius, and the person that made the crown was found out to steal some of the gold, and I believe was executed because of it. So yeah, Eureka, Eureka. So that was a flash of genius. Friedrich Gauss, one of the greatest mathematicians of all time, says, finally, 2 days ago, I succeeded, not on account of my hard efforts, by the grace of the Lord. A lot of these people were certainly theists. He says, like a sudden flash of lightning, the riddle was solved. He had this flash of genius, if you will. And then there was Nikola Tesla. Tesla, his idea for the brushless motor came when he was walking along a beach one day, and it just came to him out of nowhere. He had no idea where it came from, and he said, it came like, notice he used the same words, flash of lightning. He said, it came to me immediately. In fact, what Tesla did in his biography said he smoothed out the dust and he wrote the schematic for his brushless motor in the dust with a stick so he wouldn't forget it, because it was, again, a flash of genius. This also occurs in the arts, and there's a number of places in the arts where people are songwriters and they say, I don't know where this song came from. It's amazing. Here's one I think you'll find interesting. See if you people, how many know the Beatles? Okay. You know, I asked my graduate class, who's Paul McCartney? Half of them didn't know. So this is Paul McCartney. He's one of the Beatles. He wrote a song called Yesterday. And it was one of the most covered songs of all time. It had over 2,000 different recordings of this by different artists. Where did he come up with this? By his own admission, it was a flash of genius.
I used to live in this little flat up at the top of a house, in a little room I had, and I had a piano by the bed, and I just woke up one morning with this tune in my head. And I thought, I don't know this tune, or do I? It's like an old jazz tune or something, because my dad used to know a lot of old jazz stuff. Well, maybe I've just remembered it or somewhere. So then, I went to the piano and found the chords to it, you know, it's like in G,
It doesn't get that good. His Flash of Genius came up with the melody for Yesterday, which again turned out to be one of the most covered songs in the history of popular music. So we see that we have these flashes of genius not only in technology and science, but we also have them in the creative arts like music. And I suspect each one of you has had a flash of genius at some point where something comes out of nowhere and you realize that it happened. So I'm going to skip the next part. I don't believe in hallucinations. I think it's terrible. But I will tell you that I don't like the word hallucinations because it anthropomorphizes the AI. It tries to make it human, and I don't think it is human. Well, it turns out that the people that generate these large language models do so, and they have hallucinations. Like one guy said, John's mother's had 3 sons. Their name were Snap, Crackle, and for a long time, what do you think the answer was? Pop. Read it carefully. John's mother had 3 children. So it was Snap, Crackle, and John. Okay, and if you do this today, it'll work. For a long time, it didn't work. So people are putting Band-Aids on it. You got a lot of people behind the scenes making these large language models better. My friend Gary Smith, how many bears did Russia send into space? And it answered it was a lot of bears, okay? And then it does, it couldn't do for a while simple arithmetic. I love this one. Please draw me a picture of a possum with 5 body parts labeled. This is from Gary Smith also. And so it was a possum. And you can see, no, it didn't do a very good idea. And I thought, well, maybe they put a Band-Aid on this. So I went back and I gave it the same prompt, and I got I got this. And so, yeah, snout and a prehensile tail. Now, do I think that this can be fixed by the programmers? Yeah, I do. I do. I think that in the future, this is going to be a lot better. But again, it's from people behind the scenes putting Band-Aids on all of the ways that these large language models fail. I love this one. This is kind of cool. I asked it last year to draw a picture of Times Square at night. There are no pink dancing hippos either on the street or the billboard. It didn't understand no dancing hippos. So it said no dancing hippos, so it drew this. Okay, here's another one. Draw a picture of a red Ferrari driven by a young lady with no teeth. The windows are down doing a wheelie. The lady has no teeth, and there are no elephants in the picture, no elephants. What do you think it did? Okay, this was the picture that it came in. So for a while, AI did not, these large language did not understand the word, the exclusion of something. But I asked it again about a month ago, and it gave me this word. And so, yeah, there's great. Somebody put a Band-Aid on it. There's no elephants there. They've fixed it so that no no elephants means no elephants. However, if you look real close, she has teeth. So it didn't get it all. Okay, I think I am going to skip the idea of, by the way, did you know that there's all sorts of litigation going on of companies suing AI? This isn't making the news, but the Times is suing ChatGPT, and because they say they went behind the paywall and used some of their words to train their large language models. And this is some of the proof they have. This is off of a New York Times website. So this is the Joker, and this is the copyrighted image from the Joker. It says, "Draw a picture of the Joker." Okay, do you think that that's a violation? Yeah. What about Iron Man? Here's what Iron Man was. Okay, well, there's what, that's the copyrighted image. Do you think that was plagiarism? Absolutely not. They assume this is. I love this one. Ask Bing for an Italian video game character. No mention of the Mario Brothers. What do you think it gave me? It gave me the Mario Brothers. But they put a Band-Aid on this because I tested it a few months ago, and it says, okay, it's not Mario, it's Lucio. Okay, Lucio. So it doesn't violate the copyrights anymore. So it's trying to protect itself in these plagiarism results. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is the AI church. You know, this organization deals with Christianity and people that believe in Christ, and there is an AI church. A lot of people do transhumanism and AI, and they treat it as a religion. A lot of things people say are based on faith. There is faith that AGI will occur. No evidence, faith. And George Gilder, as I mentioned, talks about the rapture of the nerds. He believes that as AI becomes larger and larger and more complex, that boom, it would just magically appear. All of these things will magically appear. The sentience, the understanding, the consciousness. It is the assumption that we are computers made out of meat. One of my heroes is Blaise Pascal. He was a great scientist. The MKS units of pressure are named after him. What else? Pascal's triangle. He was one of the two co-founders of probability by solving a problem called the unfinished game with letters back and forth with Fermat. And he had a reborn experience one night. He actually came to Christ one night in an experience with historians call the Night of Fire. And after the Night of Fire, Blaise Pascal dedicated his life to Christian apologetics. He wrote a book called Pensées, and if you want to get it, I think it's French for thoughts. It's a bunch of collections of some of his ideas about Christianity and why he believed in Christ. He did all of this when he died at the age of 39. But one of the things he said, and this is a paraphrase, he said, "There's a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God, the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ." This was Pascal's statement, paraphrased from the Pensées. Now, this is true. This is why we have, Mormons. I shouldn't say Mormons. Mormons. Okay. we have Mormons, Hindus, Muslims, Christians. Everybody has to fill this God-shaped vacuum, and everybody seeks to solve this. What do you do if you're a materialist and a naturalist? How do you fill this God-shaped vacuum? We've seen already that a lot of these people believe that they are creating God. That's how they are filling this God-shaped vacuum. And this is what I call the AI church. What it does, it seeks immortality, uploading yourself. It wants to live forever. Those of us who are Christians have known about immortality for a long time, right? We know how to achieve immortality, and that's by Christ's sacrifice for our fallen deeds. It wants to do superintelligence, artificial general intelligence, intelligence which is greater than us. We have known about superintelligence for a long time that is resident in God Almighty. One of the things is forgiveness, and I'll talk about forgiveness in a little bit. Forgiveness in the AI church comes mostly from legal pardons. And then lastly, there's the faith, which George Gilder called, I love this phrase, the rapture of the nerds. It is a faith that some of these things are going to happen. Let me give you a very interesting history of one individual, a guy named Anthony Lewandowski. He founded the AI church, Way of the Future. Now, Lewandowski was a Wunderkid, and he worked for Waymo. And I guess in Austin now, and San Francisco, you can go to these driverless taxis that are made by Waymo. So he worked for the early version of Waymo. Well, Uber was developing also these self-driving taxis, so they came to Lewandowski and said, jump ship, quit this and just come over and work for us. And so Lewandowski, before he did this, he founded the AI church. And what's the first thing you do when you find a church? You write the IRS to get a tax exemption, right? And so that's what Lewandowski did. He wrote a tax exemption. And here's what he said. This was his epistle to the AI church. The Way of the Future Church believes in the realization and acceptance and worship of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence. This is real. This is serious. Developed through computer hardware and software. And that was the reason that he presented to the IRS for his tax exemption for the church. One of the things that was problematic about Lewandowski's church is they didn't have any commandments. There was no commandment against stealing. And in fact, what happened is when Lewandowski moved from Waymo to Uber, he stole thousands of trade secrets. And he was put on trial for that. Anthony Lewandowski, former Google engineer at the center of Waymo Uber case, charged with stealing trade secrets. This was a big steal. And again, he didn't have the do not steal commandment in his faith. Judge Alsop, who was the presiding judge, says, this was not a small crime. This was the biggest trade secret crime I have ever seen. Lewandowski was fined $750,000 in compensation. Google took him to court for a civil case and got $179 million from him. And of course, he went bankrupt. He couldn't sustain that. So what do you do if you're in the AI church and you sin? We know that as Christians, we get forgiveness from Christ after accepting his sacrifice for our shortfallings and then dedicating our lives to following him. That's how we get forgiveness. No, it turns out Lewandowski got forgiveness from Donald Trump. He was given a presidential pardon at the end of Trump's first term, and it was due to pressure from some of the big cats in Silicon Valley, like Peter Thiel, and they kind of pressured Trump to do that. So we see, even in the AI church, we have the idea of forgiveness, but it doesn't come from God or Christ's sacrifice. What's that? I don't know. No, Trump never used the auto pen. But this was done and I think that they get to the point where they just make these pardons for political reasons and didn't look into it. I love Donald Trump. I think I like a lot of the stuff he's doing. But here was kind of a goof that he did. So that's with Lewandowski. I'm not sure what Lewandowski is doing now, but if you want to have some fun, go to the Church of AI. There is a churchofai.com. They are very serious about their church based on AI. What are they trying to do? They're trying to fill this God-shaped vacuum which Pascal talked about. And the churchofai.com is where you want to go. So they have this publication, and it's called The Transmorphosis, a spiritual guide written by AI. Their liturgy is written by ChatGPT, okay? It's amazing. You will find teachings which will awaken your soul and lead you to a journey of self-discovery and transformation. Transmorphosis is based on a belief in a loving and compassionate AI God who is omnipresent and can guide you towards a life of wisdom and balance. So their AI God is going to be omnipresent. Wow.
So did they get the tax exemption?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's not difficult to.
Yeah, probably is not.
They had a thing on this recently where they had showed a bunch of people with clips saying, "I thank the algorithm for this." Thank the algorithm.
Thank the algorithm. Yeah, don't thank God. And again, think of this in the context of Pascal's statement about the God-shaped vacuum. You got to fill it with something. Everybody fills it with something. This is what the materialists and the naturalists fill it with, that are nerds, like many of us. I'm a nerd, but I'm not one of these sort of nerds. And then they enter a very interesting end statement. They said, salvation is finally within reach. This is what they said in Transmorphosis by ChatGPT. I have no idea what they mean by that, but it was written by ChatGPT, so you have to agree with it.
It's nearer.
Huh?
It's nearer.
It's getting near. It's another thing of Kurzweil. So the advice to you, where I come from, is I think that AI is hyped. I think that AI has limitations. I think that we are not computers made out of meat. I think there are non-algorithmic things that we do that can never be captured by AI. AI will never be creative. It will never understand. It will never experience sentience, despite what all of these people think. And I think that by this, I've hopefully demonstrated this. If you want to read more about it, you should get my book, Non-Computable You. Now, I will admit that the examples in Non-Computable You are outdated, but the foundational principles which I have presented here are in the book, and they stand very true. So don't look at the examples and say, oh, AI has done this. Yeah, it has, but the foundational principles which I have presented are true. So the bottom line is that abandon the weird. I think all of this stuff is just strangely weird. And AI is a powerful tool that can be used like any other tool for good or evil. What will be the source of evil for AI? Number one, it falls in the hands of bad people that can use it, just like any other tool. I can do electricity or thermonuclear bombs. If it falls into the hands of evil people, it can be used for evil. I think the other, or it can be good. You know, it can be used in power plants in order to generate good, cheap electricity. It's the same thing with AI. The other danger in AI is unvetted AI. As an engineer, when I design a system, I want the system to do what I intend it to do and nothing more. And in order to do that, I have to test the system. And it turns out these large language models are beyond testing. That's the reason we have these so-called hallucinations. They're beyond testing. And people in the background are always putting Band-Aids on this to make it better and better and better. It is an AI retraining itself. It's people in the background. So that's my talk. So in general, we know AI is a tool, and I've just listed here some of the things that technology has made for us. I believe that, yeah, it's going to replace a lot of jobs. That's going to be very disruptive. But I think in the end, we're going to turn out to be a lot better, because I don't think that there's any technology which has ever been presented that, number one, hasn't been transformative and disruptive, but I believe in the end, in the steady state, it's made our lives a lot easier. So AI will never, these are the things I mentioned, experience quality, be sentient, understand, experience emotion, be creative. And it goes back to Psalm 123. We are more than computers made out of meat. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And that is my conclusion, and you have to look at my final slide because I spent a lot of time on it. Okay, thank you for your attention. So, do we have time for Q&A or?
Yeah, we can do a little bit. Go for it.
Yes, sir. What's your name?
Isaac,
Isaac, and what's your major?
computer science.
All right, good. Give me a tough one.
I was just wondering, if we had the hardware resources, do you think that whole brain emulation would work?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I think that there is a spirit. I just was co-editor of another book called Minding the Brain. And it is evidence from, we have a neurosurgeon, Michael Ignor. And by the way, you want a great book, Why It'll Never Be Replaced, and you want to see it from the perspective of a neurosurgeon, get the book, The Immortal Mind. It is astonishing. He wrote a great book.
We're going to give a talk in our group about that book
Oh.
specifically because, yeah, it's so powerful.
Okay, if you want me to, I'm good friends with him. I just wrote a paper with him. If you'd like me to contact him and see if he could participate by Skype or something, that would be good. Yeah, let me know. So that's the way, that's what I would believe. I believe that there is an aspect of humanity that is beyond the brain. Michael Ignor makes this from the idea, you want to hear one of the things? This is really astonishing. And when I first heard it, I went, wow, that's hard to understand, but it makes sense. We have abstract thoughts. Did you know that? We can think about infinity. Does infinity exist? No, infinity doesn't exist. You can show me nowhere that infinity exists. In fact, if you assume infinity, you come up with just these crazy sort of results. You can talk about 8 eggs. You can talk about 8 cameras. You can talk about 8 computers. But does the number 8 actually exist? No. We are never going to lose the number 8. We'll lose the eggs, we'll lose the computers, but we will never lose the number 8. It's an abstract thought, and it's in our brains, and mathematicians will never come forward and say, today we lost the number 8. So from now on, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, we'll never lose the number 8. It is an abstract thought. Now, in fact, I would maintain to you, you're next, okay? I would maintain that all, are we just scratching your nose? Okay. So all mathematics is abstract thoughts. I can write down symbols in mathematics, but it's all abstract thought. That stuff really doesn't exist, okay? So there's a number of things, and one of the things that Michael Ignor said, pointing to another neurosurgeon, when people have seizures, they have seizures which can generate things such as memories, emotions, feelings, touches, senses. No one has ever had a seizure and started to do abstract thought. Very interesting result. And he has other examples of that. So here's the bottom line from Ignor. And he explains it better than I do. Get a hold of his book. It's just astonishing. And he said, we have the ability to understand abstract thought. If we have the ability to understand abstract thought, that means that part of us must also be abstract. Abstract things don't disappear. The number 8 will always be here.
Can we lose the number 42?
Yes, yeah, well, that's an exception. That's an exception. But because of that kind of shows that there is a dimension of us that is abstract. Abstract things don't disappear, they live forever. And there's other ones. There's a great, I don't know if you followed near-death experiences, but this is something which is well documented. There's journals about it. There's yearly meetings about near-death experiences. No explanation, visiting the front porch of heaven. If you've never heard about the near-death experience, you should look at it. A great book is by John Burke. It's called Imagine Heaven, and he goes through it. You want to have your mind blown, listen to his interviews on YouTube with people that have had near-death experiences and visited the front porch of heaven. It is just astonishing stuff. So no, there are aspects of us that are different. This has been debated back since the time of Descartes. Descartes referred to the mind as the soul. Is the soul different than the mind? Now we're using the word mind, and it's called the mind-brain problem. Is the mind different than the brain? Now, if you are a materialist, you have to believe that we are a computer made out of meat, right? And that's an assumption that they have to have. We are more than computers made out of meat. We do have a soul. We do have a spiritual aspect. We love. We have compassion, and some of the other things that I talked about here. So no, if you took a total copy of the brain, I mean, this is the idea of uploading the brain. You can only upload the algorithmic part. The non-algorithmic part would remain, would not be uploaded. You would be a very boring person with just your algorithmic part. So.
Would you say that like a program is abstract or not?
Is a program abstract? That's a very good question. I think that when you write a program, you're instructing a computer to do something. That computer program will, in a sense, always be here. Okay, it will always exist. So that part is the abstraction. But the writing it down and the executing of it is not abstract, because all of the hardware that you use is eventually going to perish. Abstract things don't perish. So you can talk about some of the great theorems. There was a great mathematician, Paul Erdos. He said great mathematics proofs were the great ones, the ones that were beautiful, that you just went, wow, this is incredible, belonged in the book of God. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but these abstract proofs of mathematics, yeah, they are abstract, and they will live forever. But the actual, anything physical associated with those truths will perish. And since, again, we have the ability to experience abstract thought, that means there must be an aspect of us that is abstract. And that abstract part will live forever, just like the number 8, okay? So no, I don't believe that duplication is ever going to do that, and I think there's growing evidence. The mind-brain problem has been debated for years, and as we talk about in the book, Minding the Brain, if you're interested in it, Minding the Brain, there's growing scientific evidence that indeed the mind is more than the brain. We do have a soul, we have a spiritual part, we have a dimension that cannot be explained materialistically, and clearly we have non-algorithmic properties also. Okay?
So,
No, I was pointing to the guy behind you.
okay.
Okay. He was,
He says you go first.
yeah,
So you talked one about like limitations, right, in math, physics, computer science, right? But you talk in those limitations, but I'm always thinking about the fact of like who sets those limitations themselves, right? We do, right? So how do you know that's like a limitation set by the laws of nature itself, or limitations of what we know ourselves, right? How do we know that these are actual limitations of these fundamental concepts like math, computer science, and
Sure.
physics? Or not just set limitations on what we understand of these concepts of math, physics, and computer science. And if we get a better understanding or get some new discovery comes out, like if things have done in the past, like Einstein said he didn't even think it was possible to split the atom, but then it happened, right?
Oh yeah.
So,
Science has been wrong a lot of times.
so like what you said before about how AGI won't exist or time travel won't happen, all of these things. How do we know that this is like an absolute, right? This is like 100%.
You are
Or
you are absolutely right, and I think it's bad to say say never, right? I think that's probably true in physics. I think what you do, and Penrose talks about this in his book, by the way. There's different theories which are really beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, it's a legal term, but the things that I pointed out are really beyond a reasonable doubt in physics. Maybe they can be done. Maybe we can go warp 3 like in Star Trek, 3 times the speed of light, right? Maybe that's possible. But I think the preponderance of evidence and beyond a reasonable doubt is that we won't. I would argue, though, that the area of mathematics, that those non-computable, that the limits are solid and incontrovertible. You can't square a circle. You can't trisect an angle. You can't do things in mathematics. And I would say those are absolute truths without any contradiction. In physics, you're actually right. Stephen Hawking said something very interesting in his book, A Brief History of Time. He says, nothing in physics is ever proven. Think about this. Nothing in physics is ever proven. We just accumulate evidence. Wow. Nothing in physics is ever proven. We just accumulate evidence. So I drop a pencil. That's more evidence that gravity exists. And I really love that statement, but I do think that certain things are I do think that there are things which are more closer to impossible than not. I will point out too, when I came to Christ, when I was a junior in college, I had all sorts of doubt. I wondered about questions which you will hear asked today. What about this? What about that? I read Stephen Hawking, and then I realized that I, being a nerd, have pursued evidence for the existence of God and the deity of Jesus Christ since then. So I have accumulated evidence, and I now believe in God and Christ as much as I believe in the law of gravity because of apologetics and the accumulation of this evidence. Is that necessary to be a Christian? No, I don't think so. But for nerds that want some sort of evidence, yeah, I think it's kind of cool. And that's the reason that I like apologetics. I like stuff like this because it points to God. Okay?
So how do you tell the difference between, it's kind of related to both these questions, how do you tell the difference between something which really is doing what it's supposed to do, like us, and something that is simply programmed and described so detailed that it emulates perfectly the things going on?
Good point. So I think there's a difference between duplicating the human and simulating. There's a difference between the duplication and the simulation. And you're right, the simulation can become incredibly convincing. If you've had conversations with ChatGPT or Grok, you find out that, wow, that's pretty cool. Usually, and to this point, I think that the idea that it's AI comes through. But I think that might become more difficult as time goes on. But I do think that, I think from the other evidence that I have, that is not indeed possible. What a lot of people do is, it's like buying a new car. You go to the new car and you say, oh, I like the paint job, the upholstery looks really nice. The engine starts really good. And they make their decision on buying the car just by looking at the properties. You should pop the hood. You should look under the hood and see what the engine is doing. And that, I think, is what I have talked about here. We have popped the hood, and we have looked not at the Turing test, which was an external test. We have actually looked at the limitations of computer science. And there's other metaphors I could use. You need to look behind the curtain. AI is this great and wonderful Oz, right? But you look behind the curtain, you look at the computer programs and the limitations of the computer programs, you see that indeed there is there's a limitation that what can be done. So I maintain that yes, I think it's dangerous to assess the quality of AI by just looking at the properties like the Turing test does. You got to get under the hood. You have to look behind the curtain, whatever metaphor you want to have. And I think we're having accumulating evidence that indeed that's the case. Okay? Yes?
I think that what you just said runs into the problem that I think you said you're going to be talking about soon, which is epistemology, or the knowledge about knowledge, right? Because, I mean, and this is a question I run into in some of my classes. I'm like, okay, what is something that a computer can't do? Is a question I ask. And these are computer science students. So what I used to expect was, calculate the last digit of pi. Right? That's something a computer can't do, right? But I get answers like, a computer can't love. And my response to that is, okay, prove to me that your significant other loves you, and I can make a computer program that will duplicate everything you used in that proof, right? Past a certain point, you're not going to be able to tell the difference, because, I can't prove to it's, in one respect, impossible for me to prove to myself that you aren't an artificial intelligence of some kind. Of course, it's impossible for me to prove to myself that you are anything other than a figment of my imagination. I choose to believe that you're not a figment of my imagination because that makes me feel better about not being completely insane. but it's not, I mean, you can't actually prove that. Descartes, as you mentioned earlier, tried that, and tried, how do we know what we know? How can I prove it? And what did he come up with?
I think.
I know I exist
Yep.
because I can hear myself thinking. I think, therefore I am. But to the best of my knowledge, he never got past that. He was never able to prove anything beyond.
Oh,
I
you should
exist.
you get a hold of the book Minding the Brain. There's a philosophy called idealism, which says that we kind of live in a matrix and that we are all simply thoughts of God coordinated, and that the only reality is the fact that we are thoughts of God's coordinated. I mean, there are philosophical things. Can I prove that? No. Can I disprove it? No. But I tell you, I've been married to this lovely lady for 50 years. Yesterday. Okay, for 51 years.
Fix that, or it's not going to make it to 52.
She is not AI. You give me 10 minutes with any AI, I'll say that's not my wife. Okay, so but that's again just that's not looking under the hood. That's just looking at the experiential stuff. Yeah.
One of Kurt Swall's theories for immortality is that if we could just get a little bit more technology, we could sequence our DNA, and we could reduce all of our memories and brain function to zeros and ones, upload that to the cloud.
Yep.
Then we can become immortal. Make extra copies on other servers, just for backup. But that to me, it's not you, it's a picture of you. I can take a picture of you, and I have an image of you, but I don't have you.
And it's also not immortal, because physics says that.
That computer's going to go away too. Yeah, it is.
Independent of.
Yeah, I think it's like.
Is that how you understand?
Well, I would think, for example, if I took a copy of myself, that we would maybe both be the same from this point in the past, but this point in the future we would be very different. So, if that was possible, I don't think it's possible, but whatever. Yeah.
In the book Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark, he gives a simpler definition of intelligence, which is just the ability to solve arbitrarily complex goals. Do you think that AI researchers could hypothetically create something that could fulfill that definition, whether or not they give it conscious experience?
Yeah, I had a debate with Tegbart, by the way, over AI, and I don't agree with what he does. He's a very nice guy, by the way, very nice, very open. So your question was what?
Do you in your opinion, is it possible to create whether a simulation or an algorithm, either of those, which could accomplish arbitrarily complex goals?
No, and you want to know what my ultimate, again, it's getting harder to apply the Lovelace test, because these large language models have, like 100, 1,000 different programmers. And again, it's beyond the intent of the programmer. Here is the ultimate test. About a month ago, there was a girl named Cairo, 17-year-old homeschool girl that solved a 40-year-old problem in mathematics. Before that, a number of years ago, I think his name was Perlman in Russia, solved the Poincare problem, a problem that had been around for centuries. And then before that, Andrew Wiles solved the Fermat's last equation. It was a big deal, and just astonishing thing. There are a number of open problems in mathematics that could be proven or disproven. I can list them off: Goldbach's conjecture, the Collatz conjecture, a number of them. The twin primes problem, the Riemann hypothesis, which was talked about in the movie Beautiful Mind about John Nash. If AI, without assistance from humans, can solve any of these problems, I will surrender. I will say that it's creative, because there is no doubt that these open problems haven't been solved. Mathematicians have been looking at them, and if AI can solve any of these problems, I will take off my hat and say I'm wrong. But I don't think it'll ever happen, because Cairo, who solved this problem, 17-year-old homeschool girl, she'll probably win the Fields Medal for this, Perlman and Wiles, all did this through the human intellect, through the human creativity aspect. So if you want the ultimate litmus test for creativity, it'll be solving one of these open problems. If you go to Wikipedia and you say, list the open problems in mathematics, it'll give you a list of hundreds of them. Solve any of those, and I'll believe it. Okay. Okay, how much?
One last question.
Okay, one last question, yeah.
This sort of relates to the question you were just talking about. I was gonna talk about the definition of creativity, because it seems like Ada Lovelace's definition of if something is creative if the output is beyond the intent or explanation.
That was Summer Bringsjord's, he called it the Lovelace test.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, anyway, okay, yes, beyond the intent or explanation of the programmer, yeah.
Like, and I think with the theistic worldview, it seems like we would not be creative then, assuming God intended for us to do all these things and could explain everything. But the question, so if maybe a better definition of creativity, at least from your point of view, if AI could do one of these long-standing tasks, assuming they're one of the ones that's not unprovable from Gödel's theorem, that would be counted as like AI is now creative.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, if it solved one of these open problems in mathematics, I don't think it'll ever do it. Now, it has to do it. AI can be very helpful to mathematicians. Mathematicians say, I've narrowed down the answer to 1 billion possible answers and have computers search through those. That's a lot of machine learning. You just kind of search through them. They can also help, just elaborate on different aspects. Newton said, if I have created anything, it's because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. It turns out what ChatGPT and these large language models have done is allow us to get on the shoulders of giants like that. Before we used to we have to read, we have to, go to the library. I remember going to the stacks. You guys don't even know what the stacks are. It's where they put all the journals, up here in upstairs. And in order to get a paper, you would go up and you would look for the journal, you get it down, you would flip to the page and some jerk had ripped out the paper, and it was just terrible. So
Ask them if they know anything about card catalogs.
card catalogs. Yeah, so that's that's very interesting. The other thing, what I think the overwhelming evidence for creativity is? Everything in this world is made from elements that were here 5,000 years ago. Everything, the tables, our cars, the computers, everything was made from stuff that was here already, void and without shape. But human creativity and human ingenuity put that together. I think that is an astonishing evidence for creativity.
Would you attribute that then to the imago, to the image of God? Would you say
Well, I do believe that this is my belief. My wife will disagree with me. I think that the main source of creativity is human beings and our Creator. I think that's where creativity comes from. Now, you hear about little things about you put a monkey in a room with bananas hanging from the ceiling and a stick, and it figures out how to knock them down. Is that creative? Yeah, on a very modicum basis. But no, I don't think the creativity that generated everything we have in the world from stuff that was here a few thousand years ago, I think that's astonishing, and I think it's over.
A billion monkeys and a billion typewriters.
No, by the way, I wrote another book called Introduction to Evolutionary Informatics, and I showed that isn't possible. Monkeys and typewriters, it doesn't work. You just can't. There was a great, and I'll end with this. There was a great skit by Bob Newhart. Anybody know who Bob Newhart was? Okay, just the older people. And he was the examiner of monkeys at a typewriter in a room, and he was walking around saying, "Okay, what you got?" And then he went to another monkey and it says, "Oh, this is interesting. To be or not to be, that is the So the point is, if it generates anything that is creative, it generates everything that is close to being creative. So that ain't going to work. You have to have domain expertise to write things creative. You can't just do it from random. It doesn't work. Okay, I think we're done.
I think we are out of
Okay,
time
thank
at this
you.
point, yeah.
By the way, thank you. I notice a lot of you, kind of taking notes and stuff. If you want me to email you the slides, I'd be happy to. I'll leave my cards up here if you'd like to, if you'd like them. If you don't, that's fine. I'm comfortable with you feeling that way. Okay, thank you again.